of doing my bibliometrics analysis article. So I'm halfway there.
So have you published any article and so on, which you are required to?
During my study, not yet, but in the process of to.
So today you don't have any what do you call articles to share? Probably no. I guess
No,
I assume,
no.
I assume not. All right, okay, and then we have Mr. Ramli as well. So Mr. Ramli, I do know him because I'm congratulations finishing your qualifying test for Norma, and also Mr. Ramli. All right, hopefully you have already submitted the things, Mr. Ramli.
Yes, inshallah.
Because Miss Atika is waiting for your documents.
Yes,
Okay?
Prof. Inshallah, Prof. Yes, Prof.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm not so sure whether we are going to have more. Okay, so Encik Saswandi, Mr. Siswandi is also here. Okay, so I'm not so sure whether we are going to have more or not, but basically, as I have mentioned, those who just came in, is going to be about, I guess, 1.5 hours or 2 hours of me talking, and it is more of not really lecturing, but more of giving you tips really for what you call publishing articles, and it's more of like a sharing thing. So if you have anything to share with me also, or if you have any questions, we will make it informal, right? So that we can share things, and possibly the examples that I might show come from my personal experience, right? So if you have a different experience, probably what do you call we can share, right? It's more not of me talking alone, right, lecturing, but more of sharing session lah among us. Okay, so I think Miss Atika, can I start or should I wait for a few minutes more? Because my slide will not be that long. Tak long pun, about 29 slides or less. I can start, I guess, right? I don't think anyone is coming in, hopefully, inshallah. No, no more. All right. I will share my slide. Please inform me if you can see the slides, okay? Hold on. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, Prof.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, Prof.
Okay,
yes.
good. Okay, hold on. I'm sharing. So this is workshop for postgraduate student for writing publication article. I was not really informed clearly of what to really do, right? Because it's all like I am free to do anything, as I assume. So what I'll be giving is more, as I have mentioned, sharing what you call experience, my experience with you when I publish my article as a student. Right. For your information, I might be still coughing because I just came back from Hajj. All right, from Makkah about, I guess now it's 70, about 3 weeks. All right, I just came back to Malaysia about 3 weeks from Mecca for my Hajj, right? So the coughing is still there. It's still there. It doesn't disappear yet, but hopefully, I'm recovering in that sense. Okay, so probably I might pause here and there if I feel that I need to cough, right? It was very bad over there. It was so hot, right? I guess it's among the, it was reported that this year was, I think 30 years, it was not as hot as this. 30 years before, it was not as hot as this. So it was like 50 degrees and so on when I was in Arafah and Mina. So it was very extremely hot. All right. Okay. So anyway, back to our workshop, right? As I have mentioned, I do have some sort of experience, a little bit of experience of writing with my supervisor and also publishing during my PhD, and I think that is actually something that you should try as well. And I assume because okay, for your information, I did my bachelor degree in Malaysia as well as my master's degree in Malaysia, which is in National University of Malaysia, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, both for my bachelor degree as well as for my master's degree. For my PhD, I did in University of Essex, United Kingdom. I got a few offers, right, from other universities as well, in United Kingdom, and one from New Zealand. I was going to New Zealand, but change of, I don't know, my fate and so on. So I got to go to United Kingdom, and because I had what do you call, a few offers. I got Exeter, I got University of Exeter, University of Lancaster, University of Warwick, University of Birmingham, a few, right? And I think 6 or 7 universities, but I chose Essex. One of the reason was looking into the area, and also looking at the experience of the, not really the experience, but the area of the supervisor, as well as most of the, most of the universities that I was offered. Sometimes I would have to take classes and so on. So I was looking for a more research based study. And of course, University of Essex, another reason why it attracted me was because it was not far from London, which is like a 2 hours drive, like Lancaster, Birmingham, Exeter and so on. They were very far from London, so I don't want that. So, but my main reason was, of course, the supervisor, right, and the area that she did. Okay, so and I think I made, well, basically a good choice, because at the end of the day, I managed to at least work or collaborate with her, and we were able to produce one piece of article from a very well-known, renowned journal, right, while I was studying. So that helped me a lot as well, right? So I will share that with you all too. Okay, so the first thing that, as I have mentioned, right, the difference, of course, in when you look at postgraduate, and also when we talk about postgraduate, we would have masters and also PhD lah. And when we have this, as I have mentioned, right, it is the area for PhD is different from masters, of course, because PhD is much more research based, even though you still have classes to attend to and so on. And the duration that it takes you would be somewhere from 3 to 6 years compared to master's degree. But of course, we also have some master's degree whereby you can do research based master's degrees, and USEM has one of them. I think a few faculties have that master's degree by research, whereby they would have also to sit for their viva, right? In terms of your postgraduate degree, nobody told me this, but I assume, I don't know about you guys, but I assume probably none also mentioned to you all also. And there is an important, what you call, element in PhD degree, whereby if it's possible, try to graduate on time, GOT. All right, I don't know about, I didn't know about this at all when I was studying, because because I think my university was very strict, so I managed to finish on time. And I think in United Kingdom, they don't really look into that as in Malaysia, right? In Malaysia, that is very much emphasized. But in England, they do encourage you, but it's not like some sort of a push like in Malaysia, right? So when I came back, it was quite a culture shock that, okay, so they have this GOT and so on, that you have to graduate in time. One of the things I think I did my my PhD I started I was able to, I was able to sit for my QT after 1 year, and then after 1 year I collected my data. I started collecting my data, but I think because I had some sort of miscommunication, I thought I have to do a lot of analysis and so on. That took me some time, but basically because me moving and so on, so I managed to finish. I had my viva I think before my fourth year, right? 3.5 also, I have not 3.5, nearly my 4 year, because in UK they have Christmas holiday and so on. So I had to wait for 1.5 months, and then only they start to look for what they call supervisors, for examiners and so on. Examiners were not able to come because of the holiday and so on, because in England they had a very long holiday in December. So my viva was somewhere in, I think, February, not or early January, because of the holidays that they have and so on. So I had to wait, right? But basically, when we talk about what you call GOT and so on, it is very important. I think it is a hidden what do you call, a hidden desire or a hidden merit that you can have if you can finish on time, because what do you call, some universities, they look at how long you are able to finish your PhD. So for me, all in all, about 4 years lah. 4 years, I finished everything. Right, by three, let's say nearly 4, I actually submitted everything. It's just a waiting time, waiting for my viva. So that viva, if I am going to count that, that will make me about my study about 4 years, 4 years plus. But actually, it is shorter than that. The reason, I think one of the push factor was that I guess when you are in USIM, you're very lucky. But when I was in that university, but which not all universities in United Kingdom did that, but my university did that, is every semester we have to present. We have if you do not have anything to present, also you would have to present. There will be a board of a committee, 3 lecturers, or 3 lecturers appointed to monitor you. So at the end of each semester, right? Semester, every 6 months, we have to present something. So that is actually a pushing factor, I guess, for me to finish on time, because when I present, I have to present what I'm doing and also what I intend to do. So in the next 6 months, when I meet my committee, I have to explain what I am doing, what I achieved, why I didn't achieve it, and what I intend to do. So in a way, it's like a progress. They can see my progress. In USIM, we do not have that yet. No, I did propose because that really helped. But then it's going to be a scary, what do you call, experience as well, because you will see that in that university, at the end of the semester, all the PhD students will go, we will all be very anxious, because all the departments, the PhD student in all departments, they would have to present what they have every 6 months. So that, in a way, I guess, is also a pushing factor for me to finish on time. Right, I was able to collect my data 1 year. I was already back in Malaysia collecting my data, and I was also what do you call, confirmed of my PhD status, because in the UK they do not have like us, whereby we have to have QT and so on, like mine, because I have every 6 months. So I don't know which one is the QT part, but we did have that, and that some sort of, it's called a confirmation of a PhD status. Right, so where you have to present what you have done, and then what you promise to do, and then what you have achieved, and how and why you can achieve, and so on. Right, so those are the things, right, which I think can help and have helped me. And I think you also should consider, right, to try and complete on time, because if you're going to apply for university, any university position and so on, that is one of the things also that one of the criteria that they will also look into. It's not explicitly mentioned, but it's going to be looked into, right? They will question, like, why is this person taking so long finishing his or her PhD? Something is wrong, probably, there must be a problem in his or her study and so on. So as far as if you can try to finish by 4 years, you are able to finish everything. All right. But as for my students, I don't know. I do try for the first batch of my PhD student, but normally, they will like, they say yes, and then they were not able to do it because of family commitment and so on. I guess I can't blame you guys. Of course, we will have family commitment and so on, but you have to learn to adjust. Because when I was studying, I have 5 children with me, right? 5 little children with me and my husband. So so I had to really try to juggle looking after them as well as studying, as well as being a mother and so on, right? So it's quite difficult. You can try, all right? But it's a good thing, it's a plus thing if you can finish within 3.5 years or even 4 years. If you can finish 2.5 years, then people will, respect you a lot, because normally people will say, wow, he is so brilliant, or she is so brilliant, she's so smart, because she can finish a PhD by 2.5 years or 3 years. We have that also, some 1 or 2 lecturers were able to finish on time, and they were rewarded, right? In the sense of they accelerate very fast in terms of their position, right? Their seniority and so on. So I advise you, if you can, try, because it will in a way be stuck to you, because it's going to be there when you write, when you apply for your application and so on. It's going to be there, right? You will have to write, right? You started your PhD when, and then you finish when. Okay, so that's my advice, right? So basically, when we talk about PhD, yes, as Madam Yusna Maria said, it's a lonely journey. Yes, it's a lonely journey, because you can't really share with people, right? People do know about your study, but not as extensive or in great detail as you. And then if you want to try to ask people to understand, sometimes they are not interested. All right. One of the things that I learned also is in order for you to really understand your study, you must be able to explain your study to someone in within 5 to 10 minutes. Right. So that's why I guess one of the things that they have in Malaysia is to have that 5-minute thesis as well, the presentation. Because if you can condense everything and explain to people, and you are able to, people can understand you in a layman's term, you're not using any scientific jargon and so on, then you are in the right, or at the right track, in terms of conducting your study, in terms of understanding your study, you know where you're heading and so on. In my university, right, when I was doing my postgraduate degree, we didn't have that, but I did join a workshop, and one of the exercises that they did for PhD student was actually we don't have that 5-minute presentation, but we had to actually go to a postgrad student from other faculties and explain to them what we are doing. If they can understand what we are doing, our research and so on, then that's good, right? That's good, meaning that you know what you are doing and so on, right? So that's one thing. So I guess I think there's a disadvantage also in USIM, because we don't really see a lot of PhD students, because everyone is not really here, right? Everyone is at their hometown and so on. So there is no exchange of knowledge, unless it is being done through this online platform. So I guess this is one way, right, for you, if you want to share anything and so on, right, your studies and or your findings or your research and so on. It's a good platform, and I think probably you can suggest later to the faculty to have something more, maybe a sharing session among the postgrad students of the research and so on. That would be good. All right. Okay, thank you for your response. What should I call? Madam Yusna Maria? That's okay, right? I can call
Just
you
call
that.
me Maria. I think
Maria, okay.
more informal.
Too informal, is it? All right, okay. So this is all of us know about the master's and PhD degree. Why I am sharing this is because more of that research base, right? You need to, for me, it's a waste if you have your research, you have done a lot, extensive research, but you do not publish. And, for your master's also, it's okay to publish. PhD, of course, it's a must for you to publish, especially if it's not for the university, but for yourself, right? For your career in a way, lah, right? So publication is very, very important, right? Okay, the next one. Okay, so in terms of getting published, as I mentioned, it is actually a very rewarding experience. Why? Right. First of all, you will have a very large audience. You in a way are not aware that you really have an audience, right? Until you publish. then sometimes people start contacting you, right? Asking for your, for your papers and so on, right? And now we have all these new platforms where people can follow you. So you will also, of course, see, right? You know, sometimes well or renowned people, they might follow you. And I have that experience, which for me is something that I can't really describe because I have been citing them in my work, and one or two of them contacted me, right, asking for my work and so on. And who am I, right, compared to these professors? And most most of these scholars that I cited, I think it is more of American-based professors and lecturers because of the study or the area that I was or I am interested in. But I think now there are more in terms of that particular field, right? Because I actually am interested in social cultural theory of Vygotsky, but basically in Malaysia, it was, but I think now there are a lot of people sharing information on social cultural theory and so on, but it was not a big thing in the past in Malaysia. But in the States, for instance, University of Pennsylvania, they have the Center for Vygotskian studies. And I had a few, right, professors and also senior lecturers from there contacting me, right? And that and all goes back to my publication. And at the same time, also, you will get also valuable experience, of course, because when you write sometimes, right, I think it can be heartbreaking sometimes because when you read people's comment and so on of what you have written, sometimes you get very upset or frustrated. You will not want to write again. But do not take that as something negative, but look beyond that. It's very difficult, but if you look beyond that, you will see, right, okay, this is probably, right, from my angle, I do not see this, but this person can see this angle and so on. So you take that positively, and that can be some sort of a valuable experience. I remember my supervisor, one of the things is she would always ask me to present. I don't want to present in conferences, even though it's free. We have this postgraduate university conference. I don't want to present at all because I have little children with me at home, and so I don't have time for those things. But she would always push me, and what she would do. And there was once at last I finally gave up. But what I did was that because she came and see me, she told me, Haliza, why didn't you tell me that you're presenting in this conference and so on? I said, well, I don't think I should tell anyone, right? It's not really important and so on. So, and then she said, okay, I'll be going to your session and so on. I said, oh, okay. So I know that she's going. So what I did was I was very naughty. So my session was in the afternoon. I changed that to early in the morning, which is at 8 o'clock, because I know that she will not reach the office at 8 o'clock. But she managed to come 7:45, and so she was there already in the room. And then she said, Haliza, why didn't you tell me your session changed and so on? Because of that, right? I don't like to share because I was not ready. I was not prepared to to face her in front of with other people, asking me questions and so on, because she was like, okay, but what she did was she pushed me. She said, okay, you present, listen to what the presenters are, the audience asks you, jot down notes, because probably that will help you, later for your viva and so on. And during that time, I don't take her seriously. I find that, okay, I don't want people to ask me questions, I don't want her to be there. If I can, I don't want to present at all. But I think she is also one of the pushing factors. She would push me, to present, to write and so on. So if your supervisor, push you and so on, try to take it positively, right? If you can, try. If you don't have to really reject. All right, so back to this publication thing. If you can get published, these are two, I think, from my experience, what I gain, right? In terms of gaining wider audience, you will, people from different corners of the world might contact you, right? In terms of valuable experience, you learn a lot from your, you can make amendments, you will strengthen your argument and so on based on experience, even though it can be very heartbreaking, like, because you have done a lot and then you get so frustrated, people say that it's not enough. And so I got sometimes negative comments like, it's not really enough. Why don't you look at this angle, that angle, and so on, right? And the next one is, of course, the most important thing is when you have that, I was reminded also by my supervisor, it was give credible to your research, especially when you present in your Viva. You should, right? You should in a way highlight this, saying that this particular work you have actually published somewhere, right? And it's a peer review thing, peer review journal, and it was published at certain time and so on. So by having that, right, make sure it's a credible journal as well, right? Not the ones that are not so well known. Try to find, as you say, Scopus based journal, right? Try to do that so that you have that credibility in terms of your work itself. I remember my supervisor did mention to me, right? Make sure you include that in your, in your presentation and so on, which I don't really, because my presentation, I think now they have improved a lot, but during that time, we don't have to use slides and so on. It is more of paper-based, right? I have my copy. The examiners have their own copies, all right? And luckily, my Viva was a very short, very, very short Viva, right? I was so, thankful for that. I guess it's about 1 hour or so. That's it, done. I've got my, my results after that 1 hour. And I remember one of the things that the examiner, which also I quoted a lot from for my work. So I was so, anxious and also, very worried because I might misquote her in my thesis because her names were everywhere in my work, and then suddenly she's in front of me. It was so very what I say, at that time it's not really the Viva thing, but having her in front of me also in a way, was so frightening for me, and a very frightening experience, as I can say. But when she sees you having to publish and so on in a credible journal, that helped a lot in terms of your work. And what I remember that she says to me after she congratulated me was that, yes, I think you have written this particular piece of study. So at that time, I was not really, I can't really understand what she meant by that. But now I do understand. Probably, because she can read, right, understand, and whenever she asks me questions and so on, I can answer. So probably that's the reason. But it's still something yang you don't expect, because she says something, yeah, I think this is your work. You did this work on your own. So it's like something like, why? Other people did the work by them, not by themselves and so on. But that's what she said to me. And that I think I appreciate because of these things, because she saw my publication. Of course, when I was asked in Viva, I can answer, even though it's not the accurate one, but I can, navigate her, go to this page, I think in this table and so on. So probably that helps also, right? So having said that, if you have a publication and it comes from your existing work, that can help you a lot, because you are able to defend your work. Because for a publication, you have to also not just select, pick here and there and just, paste it in another piece of paper to have a publication for that particular article, but you have to actually read again, so that, you have to narrow down your scope and so on. So in a way, you learn more about your thesis as well, because even though you say that, yeah, I'm the only one who knows my work. Yes, of course. But when you want to publish, you'll be reading extra, because now you have to restrict the scope for that particular article. So when you restrict that scope, you will be reading some more, right? And that helps to see, your the whole thesis in a different angle. All right, and that will of course help you to have that confidence to defend your work in the Viva. right? Okay, the next one is in terms of publication. So that is during your PhD, right? This one is during your PhD. The next one is after your PhD. So how can it be rewarding to you? Of course, as Maria mentioned just now, in terms of your work, right? The what do you call, progression, or you can easily get promoted lah, in the sense, I mean, shorter time for you to get promoted, because when you register, or you you register lah, you register to your job again, you have already one publication with you, right? For instance lah, for me also, I had already one. When I came back after my PhD, I had already one well-known journal, and the rest, of course, conference and so on. But at least I have one already. So that helped to push me, to, in a way, lesser my waiting time for my, my seniority, progression in my job, right, in my work. So the career advancement here is very important. No matter if it's just, you are just going to apply for the job, but you have already that particular, publication, that can give a good impression to the potential employer. And also, if you're still working like me, of course, your career progression, it will be shorter, right? Of course, you just have to add, a few articles more, and then you'll be okay, right? You can apply for your, for your senior lecturer position and so on, right? So publication is very important, and I think if you're studying, this is the time where you write, because you have all the data in front of you. It's all the readings that you have done in front of you, and publication need all this. So you have that time. You are very well versed in your, in your area. So that can, in a way, accelerate you to write, right? To write at least one piece of, article. All right? Right. So how? The next thing is how. How is basically, this is just from my experience, but if you have any other experiences that you would like to share, please do so. But one of the things that I did before publication is to join conferences, as I have mentioned just now. Basically, my supervisor will always push me, it's like, Haliza, do this, Haliza, do that. I was like, and she knows that I am a mother of 5, because when I did my PhD, I have 5 children. And at one point, my house was quite near to her house, which was again scary. So she would sometimes see me with my children, but she was so nice. She really understands. So she knows, and she will always ask me, can you join this? Are you able to do this? And so on. Despite that, she will always push me. So that's sometimes that's what I'm trying to tell you is that sometimes your supervisor might push you. Don't take that negatively, right? Take that as positive. If you can, then try to do it. If you can't, just say that you cannot. But at least try one. But what she did was that, and she even enrolled me in one of the conferences, and other conferences I did, of course, join by myself. But basically, she did enroll me in one of the conferences, but I couldn't go because of I was going back to collect my data. So that is one of them. But when you join conferences, one of the things that you learn is that when you present, right, you don't, I mean, it's a very, unpleasant experience to have people listening to you, to your study that you have done extensively, and then they question you at the end of your presentation. They will ask you, why do you do this? Why you do that? Why don't you do this? I think this is not enough, and so on. You will have people saying that, right? As I mentioned, take it positively, jot down, right? And probably if you're upset during that time, don't look at it yet. But when you go back, right, you can look again at their comments that you have jotted down. Probably, there are some essence in there. Maybe what they say is actually to some extent true. So maybe you can, use whatever comment or criticism that they gave to the paper to actually strengthen the paper. It is a very unpleasant thing. For me, yes, it is. I'm not so sure for you guys if you like it, or if you like people to comment about your work and so on. For me, I did not like, and I don't like until now. But then I try to take it positively. So conferences sometimes have a lot. And some people ask me, I don't have any data yet. I just only have until chapter 3. So should I present and so on? For me, yeah, you can present because if you can come up with later, right? When you have that responses from people, you are able to see, right, the loopholes and so on. And sometimes if you're going to write some sort of a literature review, not systemic literature, but more of some sort of a conceptual paper, for instance, you do not have to have a finding. It's just a concept, right? A paper concept. You can have that also in conferences. That can help you in terms of people giving ideas, your framework, or maybe your objective is not compatible with your framework, and so sometimes people can give you that kind of feedback, which you should jot down, right? Just jot down, and then later you have a look at it. If you think that it is feasible, right, it is actually logical for you to change according to their suggestions and so on, do so. If not, just keep it, because probably if one person see from that angle, it's not something possible, not something, it's not possible for the the examiners even to have that kind of ideas later, right? So have join conferences, and if you can submit a conference paper for the proceeding and so on, right? Just to test, or like Malaysian, they would say test water lah kan, just to test your ability to write, right? Whether it is acceptable, because they have peer review as well in conferences, in proceedings and so on. So that can help you as well. But I guess when you present in Malaysia, for instance, we don't really get a lot of response. People will always just listen, and then one or two questions, which is not really criticizing, but more of asking comments and ideas and so on, which can help you a lot as well. I have one or two presentation where I did in conferences, where after that people approach me asking, is it possible for us to collaborate and so on. I said yeah, but then of course at the end of the day, with the workload and so on, I did not contact that person and so on. But it's a sharing place, conferences and so on. It can help you, and especially if you're a student, probably they will be nicer, they might give you suggestions and so on. Or another way for publication is, of course, you submit directly to journals. This one can be quite tricky because you do not get any responses. I mean, immediate responses. You have to wait for the response or for the comments. But conferences, at least you have initial comments and so on, right? And some of the conferences, of course, nowadays they have also collaborations with journals, local journals, to actually publish the papers in in journals, right? I think USEM has a few also. Okay. All right. So in terms of that, possibly when we have conferences that collaborate with journals, right? Sometimes, right, they would require you to pay additional fee. Sometimes no additional fee. It depends, right? Because I do experience whereby we were not informed by that committee that we have to we have to pay extra before joining to ensure that our paper were published in that journal. Some, they mention it explicitly, sometimes no, it depends. But you can ask if the publication is free and so on. Normally, if it doesn't mention, then it's free. There are some conferences whereby when they collaborate with this the editors or the publisher and the conference organizers, what you have to do is, at first you have to submit one one draft, or not draft, one let's say extended abstract, or even one journal, one article proceeding, and then the second time they will ask you to also rewrite or add more to your particular article for that proceeding, so that they can in a way select that also for another journal, for instance. So it can be confusing, but actually what I do understand is that if you have published in proceeding, of course that is good as well, but the merit is quite low, right? And so what happened is that, of course, you want to publish in a journal, and it should not normally what conference organizers would do is they would advise you to actually upgrade or add more to your article journal. Do not change the title. They might see something like that. Do not change the title, just add here and there a little bit more, probably, right? The literature review and so on, right? And then sometimes the discussion just add a little more, but the findings, the analysis, and so on, you don't really have to change and so on. So it's not identical as that being published in the proceeding, but more of, more extensive in terms of the what they call journal publication. I have encountered that. There are also some, they say that you don't have to write in any proceeding. If you are selected, then you will publish your work in the journal, right? There are different ways of how conferences work or collaborate with the journal editor, right? That depends on how or what are the arrangement or agreement that they have between the two parties. Yes, Miss Maria, do you have any questions? Raise your
Doctor,
hands.
I would like to ask you, for us in USIM, so do we need to publish in Scopus, or index journals will be sufficient?
As far as I know, it's Scopus lah, right? But I think if you have index journal pun, probably at least my side is okay, I guess.
Okay.
Right? But not because sometimes they say index journal is index, but it is not being counted
Okay.
in any well-known indexed citation. So that is very important. I know that there are a lot of graduates who actually, we just want to publish so that we can graduate. Well, that is one way, right? But then it will not help you a lot because, you will just publish anywhere just to get your degree. If you can, because if you still have ample time, a lot of time, right, to write, then try to find a journal that is credible enough of Scopus Index for that matter, because you will use that particular publication later for your for your future, for your work, to apply for jobs, or even to actually progress in terms of your career. So I think if it's possible, try to make sure it's Scopus Index, not only for your graduation, but also for your later life, especially your working life later, because that helps a lot, right?
Okay.
Especially in the academic field.
Okay, my second question, in the journal, who's going to be the corresponding author? Is it our supervisor?
Actually, I'm not so sure, but for me, normally I leave it to the student, right? Because it's the student who has actually, did a lot of, work in terms of the analysis and so on. But there are some journals, like for instance, probably, right? Sometimes your supervisor say, okay, let me be the corresponding author so that we do not have to pay, for instance. But all in all, it goes back to you, right? If you feel that you are okay with it, then you can just share because you don't want to pay. Because sometimes, like in USIM, we say that, okay, you can actually present, but if you're USIM staff, one paper free. The subsequent paper you have to pay, for instance, right? So they might, ask the students to join them and so on, but then they have to be the corresponding author. But then when you become the corresponding author, the name in that particular article can still be you can still be in front. For instance, your supervisor is the corresponding author, but the name in the article, you can still be in the front, right? Not your supervisor, right? But I think all in all, it goes back to your supervisor. Like I think you won't have, that problem with your supervisor, inshallah lah. All right, in our faculty, hopefully not. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. My third question. Okay,
Wow,
for us,
okay.
we also I see that we need to attend the conference. So in the conference, do we need only to present, or we need to present and publish?
If you can, do both, present and publish, right?
Okay.
If you can, right?
Okay, but can
There
we
will be, there will be,
okay, for example, if I don't want to go to conference to present, but I publish 3 articles instead of publish 1 article and 2 conferences, is that be okay, or no? We have to follow that requirement.
No. I think for USIM, you don't have to follow that requirement. If you have, you can present and then publish. That would be good. You are doing 2 things at one time, finish, done, right? But for USIM, I think you do have to present in conferences and you do have to publish. It can be 2 separate things. It doesn't have to be from one conference. That is what I understand, right? So meaning that you can join a conference, present there and have a proceeding, but articles or journals, you just submit directly. So it doesn't have to be related to one another. That is also possible for USIM, as long as you meet that requirement. The yellow, I think the Red Cross too will get a green tick, right? So that's it. So it doesn't have to be related. I mean, coming from one conference doesn't have. The conference is more of asking for opinion from people, and of course you have, for your graduation you need conference also, right? That is one, but publication is another thing. Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
All right, thank you for asking. All right, Alhamdulillah, I managed to answer. Okay, the next one. All right, so the next one. So here, as I mentioned, it can be a bit confusing because sometimes they say that it's only for conference proceeding, but then suddenly they contact you again and say that, okay, your paper is being selected for journal. Please, make some sort of, you update your proceeding and so on, so that we can publish in a journal, and you're given a very short time and so on. So if you have that, by all means, try, right? Because now you have two publications for one particular presentation, right? So try, and sometimes they have books, sometimes they have journals. An example I give you is in ILEC, where in USIM we have this, right, International Language and Education Conference, whereby I think we are going to have one this year, but I'm not so sure about the publication. I haven't heard about we having collaboration with other journal editors. But as far as I know, back in 2021, we did have collaborations, I think, with a few, one of them with UKM, GEMA, and so on. And for instance, here in ILEC, we selected papers will be published in our own ILEC book, right? We have a chapter in the book whereby we will publish that also, right? And of course, this one Tarbiyah ni, Al-Lugha wal Tarbiyah ni is actually Arabic, for Arabic articles, right? And Ulum Islamiyah, I think, is more for social sciences. All right, so we have that this publication, whereby of course sometimes they say you don't have to submit full paper, just an extended paper, and then if you're accepted, then we will ask for more, for instance, right? So there are different ways, all right? But one of the things that you need to remember is to differentiate when they ask for abstract, what's an abstract, what's an extended abstract, what is a paper proceeding, and also journal article. Abstract is just about 250 words. That one is actually, you summarize everything, you condense everything, right, in 250 or to 500 words. Extended abstract, which I think ILEC 2023 is asking from the presenters, is actually longer, right? It consists of, because in the beginning when I encountered this extended extract, I was also confused. What is extended extract? How different is it from abstract? So extended extract is just about 1 to 4 pages, right? But it includes everything, right? Compared to abstract, abstract is just a very short and condensed version. By extended extract, you would have your intro, you have a little bit of your literature review and so on, and it's about 1 to 4 pages, and it will include figures and so on. So normally nowadays, I think it's a trend. I think in Malaysia, conferences, they would normally ask abstract and extended abstract, and that extended abstract can be the paper proceeding as well. But actually, paper proceeding, of course, we will have that full length peer review, right? Someone normally that is actually being elected by the conference organizers. They will be the editors or the reviewers. They will actually go through the proceedings, and then of course, based on this paper proceeding, right, full paper submitted and so on, right, they were asking, we will have some sort of a committee whereby we will find the best paper, right, best paper award, best paper presentation. It is more of looking at how structured the paper is, because it's a conference paper. Sometimes people take things easy, right? Sometimes the argument is loose, it's not very clear and so on. So normally best paper, how do we have that? We do have that. We would have a committee whereby we will sit down together and then discuss. All right, we look at all the papers. Sometimes of course, you first hantar the abstract or maybe the extended abstract, and then they ask for paper proceeding. And during this paper proceeding, we will sit down together, the committee, and we will find the best paper. So if you can get a best paper award also, that will be good also for you, right? Where you can also include in your resume later. Okay, so paper proceeding. So of course, this one is going to be longer, but it is being reviewed by the appointed people, by the conference organizers, or maybe what do you call, organizations, all right, or universities, right, depending lah, organize the conference. Journal or article is of course very fixed in terms of the reviewers or the editors, and they are actually, you know, appointed by the journals themselves, right? So those, that are the difference. And of course, the merit, the highest merit would be the journal article. Paper proceeding, of course, it is considered, but not in terms of the merit, not so. Right, so journal article is what you should aim for. If you can't, then have paper proceeding at least, but try to what do you call, later restructure your papers proceeding into a journal. That is okay. It's possible to use also the same what do you call findings, but of course with different argument and so on, that you will use in your, for your journal article. And of course you can cite yourself saying that, okay, this particular what do you call part has been already published in the paper proceeding in which conference and so on. So you can have that in your reference as well. So no problem with that. You cite yourself, right? So that's why we have the H index where you can cite yourself in that instance. Okay, so that is in terms of conference. In terms of submitting directly to journals of your field of interest, right? First of all, what you have to do is, of course, you have to study which journal you want to submit your article, right? So that's what I did also. I study in the sense of, okay, I look at the objectives, the aims of the journal, because sometimes your work or your discussion or your article, your piece of writing is good enough, but then sometimes it's not the correct field, all right? So it's not, you submit to the wrong journal, for instance. So your what do you call article might be rejected in that instance. So how do you get information? You can get from the journal website, right? So this is the steps, right? If you want to go into Scopus base, I'm not going into this in detail because I think you probably have you know, have listened to other speakers talking about all the Scopus journal, World of Science journal, and so on, right? So I'm not going into that. But if you want to, you know, if you want to find journals, you can go to the Scopus, whereby they have this database, and you can find those that are related to your field, all right? Okay, so when we talk about information from the journal website, where do we get it? Look into the website, look at their journal description. So if you look here, right, I have taken two. One, both are from SAGE, I think, if I'm mistaken. One is RELC journal, which is published in Singapore. The other one, I can't remember this one, where I've taken it, language teaching research. So they will give you, right, the area that they are interested in. So you have to read first and find out, right, what area they are interested in, right? So here, like the language teaching research, right, on your left-hand side, the screen on your left-hand side, it explains that it looks into language teaching in the aspect of what, right? Programs, or the syllabus, the material design, the method, and so on. But for the RLC also, it's also related, I think, for teaching and learning as well. But right, it focuses on what? It looks into more of, you have to have the theoretical framework, the theoretical aspect, as well as the practical. What do you gain from this particular one theory that you have discussed or that you have tested, for instance? So you know, right? Okay, so if I'm going to write at the end of my piece of writing, I would have to include some sort of suggestion, some sort of pedagogical implications, and so on for this RELC journal, for instance. But even though they are in the same area, teaching and learning, but the scope is a bit different from one to another. One is looking into that range, but this one, RELC journal, it's everything as well, but it looks more into the theoretical part, right? The theoretical part. So it will mention. So that's I think for me, that's the first thing that you have to, study or investigate, right? Which journal I want to, I want to publish, right? Read on that journal, what they have and so on. That is the most important thing. Okay, so another one is language awareness. So language awareness is related to more of the applied linguistics part, right? So this is also what you call one of the best journals also under WS. I think all these three are under WS, World of Science, which is of course if that journal is in the World of Science category, it is immediately or automatically will be in Scopus. Right? Sometimes there are things that are listed in Scopus will not be under World of Science. But if it's listed in World of Science, automatically it will be listed everywhere because World of Science is the highest rank journals, right? Journals that are of higher rank, they will always be in World of Science. How do you identify journals that are higher rank? They are normally being referred to all over the world. They are normally being referred to. All right, so they are frequently in other people's articles, other authors, what do you call, articles, or paper publication and so on. So that's why they have that rank, right? They are well known because of that, because people cite them a lot. Right, so if you can get into this WS, World of Science, the list of journals there, if you can get into one of the journals that is categorized under World or being acknowledged under World of Science, then automatically Scopus ke, MySite ke, anything, it will be there, right? Because it is the highest, right, journals of the higher rank. All right, this is based on my personal observation. Apart from looking at the what do you call the journal information, right? What area they are interested in and so on, right? What do I gain if I'm going, if my papers are being published in this particular journals, right? First of all, your readers will be very extensive. It will come from all over the world. And then your citation also will be quite high compared to the, for instance, MySite journal, right? Probably, right? This is just example. And this is also based on my experience, right? So for instance here, right, when I publish my work in one of the journal that was with my supervisor, all right, what I noticed was that I was being contacted, and also I was actually being normally updated, right, by people citing my work, right? So if you can see here, I just give you a few, right, whereby my what I did was this one, right, in terms of citation. This one, because I did with my supervisor, right? Language Awareness Journal, as I've mentioned, is under WS. I didn't know about that until I came back to Malaysia. People were saying WS, Scopus Index, and so I didn't know about that. What I did was just to publish with my supervisor. That's it. All right. So when I noticed, when I published that, I noticed that after that, I got, emails, inquiries, and so on, or even being followed by these people. One of them is, of course, for instance, Richard Donato, if you know him, he's in second language acquisition, right? And then Matthew, I can't pronounce his name, he's Spanish. I follow them. I follow them closely when I was doing my PhD. James Pilanto, professor, now he's in Hong Kong, but during that time he was in the States. He was one of the prominent people doing social cultural theory. So when he quoted my work, I was so, excited, I guess, super excited, over the moon and so on. And I kept getting from these people who are actually in that particular area, the social cultural area, the crux of the the researcher, the people quoting my work, even though it's only one work, but they quoted my work in most of their, what you call, studies, which is very, for me, it is something that I will not achieve if I do not, publish with my supervisor, for instance, right? In that particular, you don't have to publish with your supervisor, but I'm saying that this is because I learned from my supervisor a lot, but basically from publishing, right? So try to publish in a well-renowned journal, because they will be, people, professors following you, right? Professors that I have cited in my thesis, I have been reading their books and so on, and now they are citing me. So that is very something exciting. I can really express when the first time I heard, I got an update that this Professor Lantov is following me. Professor Lantov is, and even what do you call, the one or two email me asking for do you have any latest research being done regarding this area and so on. And of course, not because of the work, workload that I have in Malaysia, but if I do, I would again be doing on the social cultural theory. And I think it's one of the good ways, right? You to get at being acknowledged by these people, because if you are able to publish in these well-known, renowned journals, it is actually how does one journal get into this high rank status? One of the things is the citation. All right, so meaning that that particular journal is very much relied on by well-known scholars, and their articles, if you publish there, is going to be frequently cited. People will be looking for it because it is considered as credible. The review is very strict and so on. And I think from my experience, these journals, if you can get to publish in these journals, they are very professional. They will give their feedback very fast within few months. And then if they agree to publish your journal, it is going to be very systematic. They will in a way communicate you and explain to you what you have to do, compared to some journals which I do publish in not so well-known journals in this region, of course, so that my KPI I meet my KPI, my expectation as a lecturer in the same. I do have to do that. Sometimes I can't because to get to publish in these journals can take quite a long time and can be a lot of hard work, right? Because they are looking for something different, and it's quite difficult for you to give something different, right, in order for you to publish in this journal. So sometimes you go for the quick way or the easy way. And sometimes, of course, the easy way, most of the time they will ask for some sort of, you have to pay fee and so on. I'm not so sure about these journals, but as far as I know, because your paper is quite difficult to be selected, and normally in the past, right, you don't have to pay. I'm not so sure about now. Now, I think sometimes some journals, they have some sort of fees. Sometimes I heard the other day, one particular journal, scientific journal, science-based journal under Faculty of Science and Technology, it cost them about one article about 10,000 ringgit. 10,000 ringgit you have to pay if you agree to be published in that journal, right? So that can cost a lot, right? But for me, I was lucky because I got it for free, right? So if you can get, you get your paper published in these renowned journals, one of the things is, of course, you will have people following you. Another thing is that another opportunity that I get from this is actually I was being invited as a reviewer to review other people's articles. So I publish in language awareness. The editor knows that this is the area that I'm doing. So when they receive, an article that is much related to my work, they ask me to review the article. Right, so meaning that the editor agrees with that, or accept that paper. So now they want to, in a way, review the article, and they look for people in that field. And I was so lucky, so I was contacted by them, right, to actually review an article which is related to sociocultural theory as well. So these are some of the perks that you get if you can get get your article published in a good journal. You can get good readers, right? People contacting you. I have, for instance, I wrote about 10 or 20 years ago, and then suddenly one undergraduate student from England, a Malaysian, studying England, contacted me, asking me, "Doctor, do you have any other articles related to this particular article?" I said no, because that one was just my test and trial. But then I did not know that, there were, people looking for articles, right? So if you have any articles that are published, just remember that one day, if the people read your work, they are interested, they might contact you, right? So as I have experience, right? So one, if you can get published in renowned journals, you get extensive reading, right, by people all over the world. Two, your citation index can be quite high. And then three is it opens opportunities, sometimes unexpected opportunities like this one for me. It's as a reviewer for the particular journal that I have published. So for me, of course, I accept to be the reviewer because I know that language awareness is one of the the 4 quarter. I think sometimes they move from Q1 to Q2, all right, journal for applied linguistics. Okay. Okay, so next one, when you have what do you call zoom into, or you have found a few journals that you intend to publish, what you can do is that you have to study the journal in terms of the articles. All right. So in terms of the articles that they have published, that is one. And also, how do you know that your study matches with their aim and what do you call their aim or scope of what do you call journal to be published, is by looking at your literature review, or by looking at your citation, or by looking at your references, because there will be a pattern. You will notice that a pattern, okay? For instance, you are taking, all right, you are talking, yours is under what? Is it under language teaching, or is it under second language acquisition? If you're not so sure, you look at your references, right? You study your references, look at the, what do you call, the title of the references or the articles that you have cited. That will give you a clue which the weightage, all right, whether you are more towards this area or more towards that area. So that can actually give some sort of clue for you. You look for the pattern, right? The journals that you cited, the types of journal, and then also the title of not the journal, of the articles as well. Look at that, and then you will get an idea, right? So this is the journal that I should be looking into if I want to submit, for instance. All right. So it helps to actually, when you study the aim objective. Next, you study your what do you call, the area that you have. So so this is an example that I give, right? This is the list of list of references for my thesis, for instance. And then if you notice, I'm not so sure whether you can see or not. You will notice there's some sort of a pattern. Right? A pattern in the sense of I'll be looking at more of related to Vygotsky, related to second language acquisition, related to scaffolding, and talking theory of scaffolding and so on. So all these are under Vygotsky. So I have one list of articles which are related to that. All right. So I know that, okay, my field is more of that social cultural theory. So I'll be looking into journals that will accept, this kind of theory, this kind of second language acquisition theory. It doesn't have to be social cultural theory, but I know it is more emphasizing on the second language acquisition part. I also have articles which are related to the field of grammar teaching, right? So I have, because of course, when we start, our journey writing your PhD thesis, you'll be using a lot of references, exhaustive references. For me, my field, it's like 2-3 fields. I can actually separate my references into 2 or 3 fields. It can be second language acquisition, it can be discourse, it can be grammar teaching, it can be social cultural theory, and so on. I can actually, take the whole list and separate and categorize them into different categories, because my my research is actually overlapping one with another, right? But for you to actually publish, you can actually, if you're not so sure, you are not so sure of the field that you want to publish, what you can do is you just look through your references, because your references can give you some sort of a clue. Okay, what you want to where, or what you want to write, or where which journal would be very much suitable in terms of publishing your work or your thesis. All right. So one example given here, this is taken from mine. Like mine, I have 3 or 4, but I just highlighted 2 for you guys. One is the social cultural theory part, or I can look at the grammar teaching part. I can also look at the discourse part if I want. So I will have another set of references, but everything that if I separate, I can actually combine them, and that will be in my thesis as well. Okay, so it gives you some sort of idea. The references, do not take them very lightly, because for me to find good literature, or good well-cited works, normally I would go for the references, because references is like find like a treasure hunt. in order for you to find, because normally I notice that in Malaysian what do you call, postgraduate lah, right, Malaysian context, sometimes what you do is that you do not use seminal works. Normally when you cite, I will mention later, you will cite secondary authors that are not well known. If you want to publish in well-known journals, good journals, even Scopus-based journals, they'll be looking at the references as well. All right, it's some sort of an intrinsic thing. All right, where you will look at who is this person. I've never heard of this person, but in this article it is being cited. It's not well known. It is known, it is probably you cited because it is done in your context. That is okay. But when it comes to the framework and so on, you have to go to directly, not the source, but probably the second or third most important person in that particular field. How do you get it? By looking at the references. You will see people citing that person. Alright, if you really study, you will see the pattern. You can see the pattern. You will see people citing that person. So you will know, okay, so this person must be very important. Like me, for instance, I didn't know that J.P. Lantoff, James something, I can't remember his name, Lantoff, Professor Lantoff, is one of the prominent scholars in socioculture. He also started because this Matthew, what do you call his name, Eduardo Nigurela was doing on sociocultural theory. He was the supervisor. How do I know it? I assume because I was looking at the references. I was looking at, okay, like for instance, Swain's a professor in Canada, if you know, Meryl Swain, right? She was into communicative teaching and she did on immersive program, the what do you call, in Canada and so on, right? She started off with languaging, what was it? Languaging. She started with languaging, but then she moved into social cultural theory. How do I know that? How can I follow that? By just looking at the references. Right, so I started by looking at second language acquisition. I was doing on that, so I've been citing her a lot. And then suddenly I see that, okay, she's moving. Of course, I'll be looking at her past papers and also the current ones. And I can see the pattern. She's moving from, for instance, languaging, right? Peer feedback, was it peer feedback? I can't remember, corrective feedback. And then she's moving into social cultural. At one point in 2018, she started to move. She has her group. So how do I know that? By looking at her articles that she published. And this helps me a lot because I was, of course, looking for other articles for my work. But at the same time, I can learn about other authors, who are the most important people in this particular field. And in order for you to publish in good journals, you have to include these people's work, right? And I think that is one of the weaknesses in most of our articles if it was not published, right? Because sometimes there's no seminal or well-known scholars that you, you cited. You have to have these people, right? You have to have the, say for instance, seminal work is in 1940s, right? One particular theory, that's the main theory, right? Of course you will be using it, and of course in journals they would want updated, updated articles, right? So you can have that 1940s, but make sure you also cite those who are very prominent after that particular scholar. There will be a group of scholars who follow that scholar, so they might be the updated research. They have done this updated studies findings and so on, so you can get that pattern from you go from your secondary source, you look at the secondary source references, who they have taken from, and then it's like a treasure hunt. You're looking for who is the most, important people, and you have to cite these people, right? Do not only use secondary, sources in your publication, right? For your article, you have to have someone prominent, at least, so that it is some sort of, it gives credible, or it gives verification that you know your area. All right, so it's actually an intrinsic thing among reviewers. All right, reviewers of articles, because one of the things they will ask is about the references. Okay, I've been doing a lot of reviewing also for different journals, and sometimes they would ask that are the references cited prominent enough or relevant enough with the area mentioned and so on. So they have marks for that as well. So make sure you have that as well. Okay, so that is one. Okay, so hopefully a little bit more. All right, so those are the ways of you to find what are the what they call journals that would be relevant to you. First, you look at the aims and objective. If you're not so sure about your area, what you can do is you look at your literature review, you look at your references, the list of references you have, so you can categorize them. Okay, you are heavy on which side? All right, what area are you actually into? All right, sometimes you don't know. Like for me, I don't know because I have a lot of different fields in my study. Right, I use second language acquisition, I use discourse, I use grammar and so on. Right, so I don't know which one. So when people ask me, I say I'm not so sure what I am actually. But when I look through the references, I say, oh, okay, I'm quite heavy on socio-cultural theory. Right, but then socio-cultural theory, I'm looking into what? I'm looking more of in the teaching and learning context and so on. So you have bigger scope, and then you are going to narrow scopes, right? But basically, you can get your idea from the references that you have cited. Now, in terms of writing the article, the important thing that you have to remember is that because you are in the process of writing your thesis, so you're not starting from scratch. You have a lot of data in front of you, right? So now what you have to do is just to pick and choose which data is very important for you, which data are not, and so on, for you to write that particular piece of article, right? Say, for instance, you're publishing an article while you are doing your PhD, right? So how do you do it? You have to remember it's not from scratch. You have everything already with you. It's just for you to start, right? So in order to start, study first. Right, study the journals and so on. So when I talk about being extensive, you have done your extensive reading and so on, because you would have your framework, you have already things for your literature review, you know your method, right? Even though probably you are quite vague, right? For me also, it was like, I'm not so sure what I'm doing, right? While I was studying after 1 year, even though I was collecting my data, I was like, I don't really know where I'm going, for instance, right? But I just know that, oh, I have to collect my data and so on. Okay, so, but you have that already. So now you have to sit down and think, right? Focus on what area you are going to look at. Okay, so how to make full use of your thesis? As I say, you milk the you milk the cow. So now you milk the thesis, the gist. You try to actually use as much as you can the data, the discussion, and so on from your thesis or your research. First of all, where you can get them. One is from the pilot data. The other one is, of course, if you have the findings, you can use the main data collection. For my publication, what I did was with my supervisor, we published the pilot data. All right, so she with me, she published my pilot data. Of course, we sit together when she writes. We will always she will be calling me to her office, asking, is this correct? That kind of thing and so on. So that's why we share. That's why her name was in front, because she did a lot. Because I was already involved in my writing, so I was not really into this. So what she did was she would always come, we would discuss, and then she would write, and then she would ask for my verifications. Like, Aiza, this is the one that you did, right? This is how you do it. What happened? That kind of thing. She will collect, and then we will discuss and so on. And she will show me when she finished, writing, this is this part. Is this okay? What do you think? You verify whatever she has written and so on. So for me, I don't mind her, her name is in front of the article, because she did a lot. She did a lot in terms of restructuring, because I am learning from her, so I don't mind. She's structuring, the thoughts that I have, the data that I have. So how can you make full use? If you have your pilot data, by all means, use them. All right, use them to try and publish one. Right, and you have your findings. Of course, that is towards the end of your study. You can publish before you graduate, or even after you graduate. You can keep that, like what I'm doing, right? And of course, by looking, how do you now you are going to separate or segregate or divide. All right, you have a lot research questions, list of research questions. Now you want to publish, which one you're going to use, right? So you have to strategize. You have a lot of research questions. So what are you going to do with your research question, right? Look at your research aim, look at your research question, and then look at the objective or the aims of the journal. So you are going to try and match which, research question, which research objective that you can actually go into detail or go into depth in terms of discussion that it fits with that particular journal. I'm talking from my experience. I'm not so sure about you all punya experience, but this is how I did it, right? After the first thing was with the pilot data. So what we did was we look at the research question because I was actually testing my instrument. So when I tested my instrument, I had two research questions, for instance. So we match with the particular, journals that we want to publish. Okay. So by looking at the research question and the research objective. So what I did with my supervisor was actually to study. And then for my pilot, of course lah, right? I have only two questions. I have 2 or 3 questions. I can remember. So we studied. So what we did was we take the whole pilot findings and then we sit down together, right? Of course, and write and so on. But if you have the subsequent thing, what you can do is actually you study your research question. Sometimes your research question can be separated. They are not linked to one another. So actually, when they are not linked to one another, you can actually come up with different articles for different research question. So and also, of course, when you have separated, you'll be using the same literature review. You'll be using the same participants, you'll be using the same literature review, and so on. So what do you do, right? So the most important thing is that if you have that research question, just like I did with my references, I divide my reference into, for instance, grammar teaching, and the other one is on social cultural theory. So what I can do with my literature review, of course, also to find which one is related to grammar teaching, for instance, which one is related to social cultural theory. So I will divide that. All right. So meaning that I am going to use the same pool of literature review, but I'm going to extend further. Meaning that if my focus is on social cultural theory, of course, the main discussion would come from the thesis of that the social cultural theory part, but I'm going to add also other stuff. All right, and then I will not really use this second language acquisition discussion and so on. So I would pick and choose. I would try to separate, find, and then I would add. And if you are not so sure, you look at the keywords, right? Look at the keywords of your research question. If you're not so sure of the area, what do you want to write? Look at what are you going to write from this article. Look at your research question. Look at the keywords. What you are looking for instance. And then, of course, your literature review, because you're using the same pool, then you have to add more to that. And of course, if it's and this is one of the common mistake again, one of the things is you do not update your reference. Sometimes if you have graduated and you want to publish, you still be using the same, the same citation, the same authors, and so on, but you do not update. You should update, always update. All right, even though it comes from the same pool, but when you write your article, make sure you have new, research into new discussion, into your discussion. All right, so your existing sources that you have actually included in your thesis will be just the main reference, but that can help you to find other people's work, the current one. From there, you can actually, it's like, as I said, treasure hunt. It can help you to find the current, studies, because well-known current studies will be looking at these particular people as well. So you will have new pools or new sets of study based on these people that you have done your research. Like my research was like about 10 years ago, for instance, right? 10 years ago. So what I'm going to do is I'll be looking at, these are my authors that I have cited, but I will key in Google whatsoever and then find what are the current works that are using also these authors. So I can cite these people, I can find. So it's like finding, the how to find is like following the trail. You have the end, now you're moving, towards the beginning. So it's the other way around. You're going the other way around. So this is what I do normally. All right. I take one research question. I focus on that. What's the area? What is this area about? And then I take out all the important keywords or discussion related to it, and then I will add more. Okay. The next one is in terms of the common mistake I did mention, most of our students, especially, they like to use secondary sources. That will not help you to get published because journals are quite good journals. They are quite particular in terms of the sources. They want to see well-known people in those. And of course, one of the tricks is also to cite what do you call articles from their journals, right? For instance, if you're writing into, for instance, UKM journal like 3L, for instance, right? 3L or Gemma journal, right? Gemma journal is also a good journal, right? In UKM. So you have to cite articles published in Gemma as well, previous articles. So people say that can help as well, all right? That can help the journal because the more you cite articles from that journal, the higher the higher rank that the journal will be included. You know, the ranking of the journal is based on the citation, right? So that's why most journals, if they will in a way act implicitly, they do not tell you directly, but implicitly they would require you. There are some journals who mention which will state you have to include 1 or 2 articles from their what do you call journal. There are some journals I encounter where they explicitly mention that, but most of the journals they do not mention that. But you still have to actually cite 1 or 2 from their particular journal because that helps their index. And that, in a way, you know, one of the way to make sure that your article is being accepted. So try to lessen the secondary sources. I notice this because sometimes when I read proposals and so on, I know the context is in maybe Arab countries, and they'll be using that. Of course, you'll be using what you call studies from Arab countries, but those are not seminal. Those studies are based on one framework, you know, somewhere, right? One common framework that is renowned or that is well known. So you have to find that framework. Do not use only those, you know, related to your context, for instance, right? The Arab context, for instance. Find something. Who's the seminal? Who is the prominent figure in that particular field? So you have to make sure it is being cited. So this is one of the common mistakes, all right, which in a way do not make your, what do you call, article strong enough to be included. The next one is when we talk about focusing and so on, right? These are again some of the things, right? So you have to make sure that you have that. What I did was actually to look at my research questions. I would separate them, research question 1, 2, and 3, and then I would try and extract all the literature review parts which are relevant to them. Right? So there will be some that is going to be overlapping. All right, that's okay because I will add what do you call new ones, right? Updated ones. And once I have that, right, I just put that, you know, having the intro, having the research question and so on, then I will start trying to restructure. So why? Because you need the clarity, you need the consistency in terms of what you are making sure that your research question is going to be what you call logical with the research objective is going to match because you're sharing the same thesis. Everything comes from one thesis. So they are sharing, right? Research objective and research question. So you want to make sure that whatever you have selected, right, separated, right, into groups, they are relevant to one another. And then consistency is very important. That is also one of the things that they will look into journals. One of the criteria that for me as a reviewer, I would have to give marks, and one of them is also consistency. And because you are taking from one particular thesis, so it is very important that, of course, you'll be using the same, sometimes the same framework. You'll be using the same framework. So rephrasing is very important. You have to learn how to be good at rephrasing. You have to be very good at looking at different angles. You have the same apple, but for this particular article, you're looking from angle A. But for that particular article, you're looking at angle B and so on. You have to learn how to do that. How do you learn that? I learned from J.P. Lantoff, Professor Lantoff, right? Because he is into social cultural theory, and even Meryl Swain from Canada, professor. They are using the same, sometimes the same study, but how they discuss they highlight, sometimes they highlight A more, sometimes they highlight B more. So because during my PhD, I was reading their work, so I follow them closely. All right, I follow them closely. So when I follow them closely, I can see the pattern. I can see something, this particular example has been used in his article in here, but now he's also using in here, for instance. But I can make a comparison. Okay, this is how he writes. Different. He will, in a way, rephrase it and make that as a secondary. But in this particular book, for instance, he make it as the primary. So he changed. But actually, the things are the same discussion. So I noticed that is how well-renowned scholars, that's why they keep up, right? They start, they have to publish as well every year, right? So that's how they did it. Of course, they will do with they have their own research team as well as their students. But when they write, that's how they do it. So I noticed that pattern. So you have to learn how to rephrase. And when you rephrase, it's not just rephrase, but you refocus. Meaning that, as I mentioned, you have one apple, but for this particular article, you're looking at part A, all right, section A. But for this particular article, it's the same apple, but you're looking at part B. You emphasize more on B rather than on A, for instance. So that's how they did it. All right. So I learned from that by studying how they write, right? Looking at the patterns, progression of the same, the same study, but how they write it in different articles. Okay, so you have to learn how to rephrase and also refocus. And of course, this is very much important when it comes to the method section, because you're going to share, because you are using from one thesis, one study, but you are going to publish in different articles. Of course, the method more or less is going to be the same participant, the same way you tested, and so on. So this is also where rephrasing and also refocusing is very important, right? It's very important. I will show you examples. Now I'm just explaining, but I'll show you some brief examples. Okay, I think this is the example. Okay, for instance, this is my thesis, right? So I'm looking at collaboration and verbalization because it's under theory Vygotsky, and they are studying grammar. All right, so that's why I have grammar aspect as well, because I'm looking at how people understand grammar. All right, specific tenses by using certain framework that is under Vygotsky. And how do I get that? I get that through verbalization. So when I do analysis for verbalization, I would have to use discourse. I would have to know some aspect of discourse, because I analyze that based on discourse and based on Vygotsky. But my method is more of Vygotsky, but my material is of grammar. So there are 2 or 3 areas that are jumbled up to become one thesis. That's why I can actually separate, right, when I want to write an article. So this is for instance, my title. So this would be my research question, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've forgotten already about that. So the first one is just looking does. So yes or no by having the results, right? So I would have statistic. It's not a straightforward statistic because I would use inferential statistic. I will not use this the mean, the average, and so on. I use ANOVA, but mine is parametric because it is, I think it's abnormal, right? So the data is not I cannot get the normal data, so I had to, because the size is very small, because in the beginning I wanted to do qualitative, but then my supervisor said that no. After our discussion, she said that I advise you not to do qualitative, because when you do qualitative, the argument will go longer, right? Because you really, really need to convince the examiners, right? It's not just picking the cherries, picking the good ones and including that into the, into the thesis, because that's what people would say about qualitative. So she said that let's try. It was I already halfway, I think, halfway before I collect my data. And then we decided, okay, we'll try mixed method. All right, mixed method, because she said if it's qualitative, because she said she also went through a very hard time during her Viva, because hers is fully quali, and it's quite difficult to convince people if you're doing fully quali. So that's why she said, let's go for mixed method. At least you have, you know, statistical data to back you up with your quali, for instance. Alright, so I have, for instance, the quali part, and also I have the quanti part. So the quanti part is by looking into how the students verbalize, how the students talk to each other, and so on. And that I will use analysis from this course, for instance. So I have a few different studies that I use, or different ways of analyzing my data, which I can now separate it into a separate study for separate articles. Okay, so here I have the, what do you call, the questions, and what I did was that, okay, so one of them I use for Malaysian, this is the Malaysian Journal, I think this is with UUM, Malaysian Journal of Learning and Instruction. So what I did was I studied what they wanted, right, what they are looking for, what are their aims and so on. So I matched them. And one of the thing is, so I know that they are interested, they are more into teaching. So what I did was I look at teaching, but I do not use the word grammar. So to make it fancy, I use meta language, for instance. So meta language is actually talking about grammar, like you understand the rules and so on. So I took one of the research question, the sub research question, which is the meta language. So here, my focus is looking at second language from the particular thesis. All right, second language, the meta language, the grammar language, how it helps them, how grammar language that they have in already with them help them to understand new grammar language. Okay, so that one. So what I did was my focus is looking at how is meta language used, how the grammar knowledge that they have help them to learn new grammar, for instance. So I changed that a bit. So my focus is on meta language or meta linguistic knowledge, or in other words, it's grammar. And then I'm looking again, because mine is on Vygotsky. So I'm looking again at mediation. My instrument is the same. I have my task and I have my verbalization protocol. But for my analytical procedure for this particular article, what I did was I looked at, I analyzed the data from using the framework of what they call the framework that I've taken from my thesis. One framework, which is under Professor Swain, which is the languaging framework. So I have 5 research questions. What I did is I pick one. I pick one area, which is question, I think 1 and 2 and 3, I combine them and I look at only the meta language, the grammar knowledge that the students did. So I get this one particular article. The next one I did is again using my same thesis, all right? So what I did was, just now I used meta language. Now I changed meta language into grammar teaching, all right? Just now looking at what students know. Now I'm looking at what teachers, all right? What you can use to teach the students. So how this grammar teaching, how the tool, the material itself being used to teach students, how that helps. Just now I was looking at how students' knowledge help, but here how the tools that I have help the students to understand. So the tool is the concept-based instruction. So my focus is on, now I'm looking at how that particular concept. Just now, if you look, I'm using CBI. Of course, CBI is here, concept-based instruction task, but my angle is looking at students' knowledge. But here, the second article, I am looking at that particular approach itself. I'm not looking at students' knowledge now. Student knowledge is becoming my secondary finding. My main finding is the technique that I have introduced to them, how that helps. So in the first article, the technique was secondary or maybe the third layer. But here, the technique is the first or the primary focus. Why? Because I know RELC Journal, they are looking for what they call new framework. And I know concept-based instruction is not very well known in Malaysia or in the region. So I go for that. All right, I go for that particular theory and as well as pedagogical approach, because I know RELC Journal, they look for this kind of approach, new teaching approach. Right, so I use this concept-based instruction approach as my primary discussion or premise or basis for me to discuss all right, in this particular journal article. All right, so I look into, so just now my focus is on the grammar knowledge of the students. Now it goes into when I discuss the research, the literature review, I'm not focusing on the grammar knowledge of the student, but now I'm looking at the teaching, the grammar teaching and learning approach. What are the approaches used in all over the world? We have communicative language theory, we have audiolingual theory, we have whatever theory. So I use that in my literature review because my focus now is already shifted from students' grammar knowledge to the teaching technique, right? So my literature review, I would again be using those taken from my thesis, but I'm going to add more to that because my focus now is more of on grammar teaching, and I'm using the same thing, the same what you call instrument, right? And analysis, like just now, the analysis was looking at the students' verbalization, more of the qualitative part, all right? But this one I have taken because mine is mixed method. I use the procedure or the analysis based on my statistical findings, right? The descriptive and also inferential statistics based on the pre and post test. This one, I do the first article, I do mention about the findings of the pre-post test, but that was just to support my argument of this knowledge. But this one, the second article, these are the main discussion, right? And because of that, I say that, yeah, they are able, this new technique helps them a lot, for instance. Okay, so I have shifted the angle by using just one particular thesis, right? My thesis. The next one, this is from my pilot, right, which I did with my supervisor. So what we did was, again, rather than look at this one, we look at again the grammar teaching, which is the CBI. Here also we are looking at CBI, but we do mention that this is a pilot study. So we are looking at this, we are looking at the materials. Does it help, and so on. And of course, this one is quite similar to the previous one because we are looking at the same technique, but the people that are involved are different. Because in my pilot data, the people that that assist me, all right, were mostly language teachers, second language teachers. Actually, they were PhD students at University of Essex, and most of them are English teachers. So I tested on them, about a few of them, right? I tested on a few of them, right? So the what do you call the angle is a bit different. The participants are different, but the framework would be the same, all right? And here the analytical procedure is more of a combination of the what do you call qualitative and also quantitative. So as you can see, we have 3 different articles, but they are quite similar to one another. It's just the approach and also the angle that you are looking at, okay, would be different. Any questions so far? Because I've been talking alone. No question? Okay.
No.
No question. Hold on. Hold on, Hold on. Give me one moment. Someone just knocked the door. Give me.
Yes.
So sorry about that. Yeah, I'm going to cough now. Okay, so as you can see, we're going to cough. Right. So if you can see, I have 5 questions. And I have used exhaustively question number 1, question number 2, and question number 4. So for my future article, which I haven't got the time to write, but what I did was I was able to actually separate already the required literature review, and also the analysis was on research question number 3. And I think if I have the time, I would have to find some time to actually start writing for research question number 3. So hopefully I will be able to come up with one good article based on question number 3. Okay, so this is my future writing lah. All right, future article. So I have used exhaustive. So if you can see, I have managed to actually produce 3 articles from well-cited Scopus Index, journals. All right, 3 articles from 1 thesis. And I have actually come up with, I think, 2 or 3 conference papers based on this particular thesis as well. So actually your thesis actually has a lot of things. You can actually use them exhaustively, as if like milking the cow lah. You can actually know whatever you have from your thesis to come up with good articles, right? So I'm able to at least show you 3, but actually I have more which I have used for different angles. Sometimes I would take only the sub questions. You know, you have to refocus and then you come up with conference articles because it's not going to be very strong. So what I did was that, okay, this one is not for journal articles, it's just for conference articles only, for instance. For instance, I might say, for instance, under verbalization, I look at discourse, right, techniques. So I would pick out, okay, I'm going to look only at discourses only. So I look at certain words, for instance, that students use and how it helps them. So I have actually zoomed into like what do you call a minute area, right? You have a bigger area, you have smaller, the sub question, and I go into that, all right, in another layer of it and try to extract that, but it's not going to be very good. So I know that, okay, this is only for conference paper only. So that's how you milk the cow, or that's how you milk your thesis. You have your questions, so you study the journals, and then you know that you have already good literature reviews because you're doing that. You're in the process or progress of writing, right? So you have everything. You know people, you know who are important and so on in that field. So you can use that and then start writing. So hopefully, right, pray for me. If I hope that I can actually come up with an article on research question number 3. And because I know that I have good literature review articles, I have a good analysis. I'm going to try not to publish in just a my site journal, for instance. I would have to try, in one of the high ranked journals. So because I have what do you call a very sound analysis that I did on this. So it would be a waste if I'm going to use it in a journal that is not well known, because it's not that I do not respect that journal, but more of a merit. You want the merit of that journal, right? So this is one of them, which is still in the process of writing. It's there already. I have separated everything, but now it's just, again, I have to do some reading again to update the sources. All right. And of course, you have to again structure and so on the article. So if you can see, I have actually used most of the research question that can be found in my thesis. Okay. So before there are a few slides more, right, before we end, right, a few slides more. Some of the things that you need to consider before starting to write. Now you have everything with you. For instance, I have the research question. I have separated it into separate, fields for separate, intended journals that I have, right? And then how am I going to start to write, right? You have to make sure your article is consistent with the journal, all right? It must be very consistent with the journal that you want to write, right? So if it's a applied linguistics, so make sure the articles are related to applied linguistics. If on teaching, make sure it's related to teaching and so on. It should be consistent so that, you know, the rejection rate is low in this instance. And one of the advice that I got from my supervisor was that sometimes you have to try to submit to the better journals first, the good journals first. If they reject, they will give you the comments. The comment is very valuable because from that comment you write again, right? You write again and so on. Then you go to a journal that is a bit lower than the first one. So that's how we started. Even my supervisor, so that's how she started. She goes, our pilot, data, she went to the first journal, right? That one rejected, we got the comments. So we look at the comments and then we start, sitting down together, restructuring and so on. And then she would say that you don't write, Haliza, because you're still learning. I will write the article, but we will write it together, right? So that's what she did. We'll write it, she will show me, and then we will discuss, right? And then, so she says, okay, this journal reject us, so we go for a lower, rank journal. So that's how we work. And we were very lucky. It's just the lower to the second one, we got it already. That's how you do it also sometimes. You go for the higher because the comments, it can be very frustrating, but actually it is very valuable to strengthen your argument. It's very valuable. It's so upsetting at times to read how the editors or the reviewers, comment your work and so on, but take it positively because it can help really in terms of strengthening your, your article itself. All right, so first of all, make sure it matches with the aims of the journal. The second one is, of course, because you have taken pick and choose, you make sure that it has some sort of the logical coherence elements. It must be very clear. When we talk about very clear, I guess you are all quite well versed with this. We have to know who, what, where, when, how, and so on. It must be very clear in terms of that when you present or you discuss. And the most important thing, also, when you start to write, the first sentence is very, very important. I didn't know this. I learned this by experience. The first few sentences of what you write in your article is the key to being accepted or not accepted. It's the same thing as well, actually, in your thesis. Your research, your first introduction, right? The research in the chapter 1, the introduction is actually most of us, I think, most of what I have read, you would start with some sort of giving a background to the context, right? To the context or to the historical facts and so on. But actually, the first few sentences you should start is actually from the from your title. You look at the keywords, you look at what's the framework. That is the first sentence you should start in your particular thesis, which so far I only find a few who can do that, right? So who can do that? They started with the keywords from that particular, from the topic of the thesis. So that will be the first, because that is the attention grabber, right? Because it creates the context. It is not looking at the historical context of that situation and so on, but it's looking at the framework, the area or the scope. You have to start with that. So it's the same thing as well in an article. You have to provide the context, and it should be an attention grabber, meaning that the person wants to read more. Okay, so after that, of course, it will be followed by a natural flow of it. So I will show you an example of this. Right, the first few sentences should actually provide some sort of an overall, the overview of what you are going to write for the whole article. Okay, so this is an example which I have taken again from my 2 articles. One is from Language Awareness, the other one is from Malaysian Journal of Learning and Instruction. Okay, both are taken from the same thesis, but if you notice, right, in terms of introduction, because the first one, the verbalization one, I'm looking at this one, verbalization, right? And this is my keyword, verbalization and mediational tool, right? So here when I started, and of course, why? Because they're looking at understanding. They're trying to understand English, grammar through verbalization, right? Okay, so I will start something with this. I will start with English tense, aspect, and system is a major problematic area for L2 speakers. So it reflects here. This is the problem. It is being reflected here. This one is on grammar. I'm using the use of meta language. Again, it's verbalization as well. They are verbalizing, but this one is just normal. When we analyze, it's going to be a bigger scope. But this one, I go into specific scope. I'm looking at when students verbalize, they use their grammar knowledge. So here, the use of the grammar knowledge to understand grammar. And what are they using? They're using this thing, the same thing. So instead of starting with 10 aspect, because I'm doing on grammar, so what I started is that discussion regarding grammar instruction. So the keyword must be reflected in your first sentence here, which I find it does not happen even in many of the theses that I read. Actually, in your background of studies, chapter 1, this is the first thing that you have to start off with. It's the same thing with article as well. Good articles, you have to reflect the keywords in the first sentence. You have to. How to do it? You have to study. All right? I study a lot how people write, how good scholars write. I study how they started their first sentence. Right? And then based on my discussion with my colleagues also, they say, yeah, it's very important. The first sentence is very important and it should reflect the topic, the focus, not the whole topic, the whole thing, the crux of your discussion. So it comes from the same thing, but then if you look, it's like a different thing. So here I'm using Hausen, Kennedy, and so on. But here my focus is on Alice, because Alice, right? Alice and so on. These people are all into implicit and explicit knowledge of grammar. You learn grammar, right? We have grammar, implicit grammar, we have explicit grammar, and so on. So this is not my main data, but I twisted it. Right, twisted it to become as the main thing, right? So it becomes, because I'm doing on grammar, so I know these people are all renowned people in terms of grammar knowledge, implicit and explicit. So this would be the first thing that I would use. So if you can see, this one, both are related to grammar, but one is the tense aspect system, problematic in terms of what? In terms of looking at, they are not able to internalize. But this one is more of the instruction itself. The instruction itself, we are arguing. Should we teach grammar explicitly, meaning that separate grammar, you teach noun, tense, or so on, or you should go by using communicative language teaching where grammar is embedded. All right, so are we going to use it as a very separate grammar, subject, which is explicit, or we should have it embedded or included in your speaking lesson and so on. Why? Because my focus is on meta language, which is the knowledge. So my first sentence reflects that. So for you also, you have to learn how to write the first sentence that reflects the framework, that reflects everything, the keywords, the crux of the discussion in your title. Okay, it's the same thing as thesis level. So this is the first important thing, which can be quite difficult for us to master, but I think if you study how people write, you can actually imitate. All right, so my supervisor always remind me, Hadiza, imitate, do not copy. Do not copy one by one, but imitate. She always say imitate. So that's how I learned. Because she says when she was a student, she also imitate. Imitate means you look at how good writers write, and you try to follow. And then soon you have your own style, but you try to follow their style. Okay, and the next one is this one I did on concept-based instruction. So my focus is on instruction, but again, I was looking at grammar. All right, I'm looking at grammar, helping how grammar helps. So because this is RELC, this is what they want, right? This is what they want. They're looking at pedagogical aspect. So of course, I would start with something like the teaching word of forms. It's actually grammar as well, right? For the past decades, the teaching of word forms, also known as grammar instruction, has been the subject of the discussion in second language teaching learning context. It's quite similar to this, which is discussion regarding grammar instruction or second language teaching and learning context has long focused on, but here the focus is on implicit or explicit knowledge. The third one is not implicit and explicit knowledge, but it is looking at the grammar context. Why I chose grammar? Because I know in Southeast Asian region, we love pedagogical implication, pedagogical approach. So my focus is on this. I don't go for verbal, I don't go really into Vygotsky thoughts and so on, because we are not really interested in that. Our second language acquisition, field, is not into that so much. We like to have that with what they call grammar or pedagogical teaching. So my focus is on grammar. But if I'm going to write my last article, I'm trying to milk that one, that is going to look into the qualitative part, which is a lot of theories going on related to that. Okay, so if you can see, right, from one thesis, we have different ways of writing, and they are actually talking about the same thing. It's just the focus. The focus is very important. And the first line is very, very important. If you can get your first line right, then inshallah, the rest too will follow, will be quite smooth in that sense. Okay? Okay, so finally, I think other than that, of course, as I've mentioned, you have to study the format. If you're not so sure, right, you know, okay, RULC, they want pedagogical teachings or approaches, new approaches, and so on. Look at their previous articles that will be published, how they write it. There will be some sort of a implicit, right, hidden format that you can actually find. You know, it's being followed by other, writers. So you can get that. An example that I can give is that some journals, they would highlight the research question. The writers would highlight the research question. But in some journals, it is not being explicitly or clearly stated that this is the research question. Rather, they will use it as research objective. Right? They will use it in a statement form, rather than a question form. In some, you will write, for instance, to this end, the study is going to investigate the following, or to find answer for the following research question. There are some journals who allow you to do that, but there are some journals, if you notice, the writers do not explicitly mention the research question. They will just mention the research objective. How do you know it? You have to study. Pick out a few which are related to you, and you study the format, right? That's what I did. I studied the format and the structure before I submit my article, right? And then, of course, the structure, the order of the discussion also depends, because some, like for instance, this MJLI, the Malaysian Journal Learning and Instruction, they have very specific format, right? Structure that you have to follow. So for you, you look at how they write, and then in order for you to be able to fit whatever your premise, your research question, your literature review, and so on, into that structure that they have actually suggested, for instance, for you. Or if they do not suggest, then look at the other articles found in that particular journal. So by doing that, you are able to align whatever you have and fit that into the structure that the journal has. Okay. I think finally, all right, this is my final say. I think these are the things that you all are already familiar in terms of what are the things or the merits that are needed for worthy publication. Normally, good journals, they are going to look at things that it's actually the same thing. Sometimes we talk about discourse markers. We talk about how, for instance, pauses, how, for instance, the word so, for instance, so, right, or so, therefore, so what, and so on. So those words so, for instance, is actually being studied in different studies. But actually, if you study very well, you know that the findings are sometimes very simple. The findings from that particular article, which are written by a renowned scholar, looks very simple. It's just sometimes descriptive statistics, but how they argue, that is actually the most important thing. How they argue, right? How they argue how they present the discussion. That is the key also. Not only the findings, sometimes findings are very simple. It's just descriptive statistic, how many percent, and so on. But how they argue, they lay the foundation, it's very critical. So you have to be able to use that, right? You have to be able to, you need to study how they do it, right? So of course, when you have your, what do you call, publication, you would have to have all this lah, right? The research question or research objective, the framework that you're going to use, the literature, it has to be updated, it has to be extensive, it has to be from renowned scholars. And if you're publishing in that particular journal, make sure you use 1 or 2 articles you cite from that particular journal as well, so that their index will go higher, right? And then, of course, when you talk about the method, it must be very clear. This is very important. Good journals want clear method. It can be very brief, very succinct, right? As we say, very brief and clear, but it has to be detailed, right? It has to be something that is not doubtful, right? You can see clearly how they do it, how you conduct the study. Some journals, they want very extensive method. Some journals, like for instance, Quarterly TESOL, what you call, the design of the method is very detailed. You go and study, right? Compared to other journals. TESOL studies, pages of the article would be like more than sometimes 10 pages because the method is very detailed, right? But some journals, good journals, they do not want detailed method, but it must be very clear. It must be very clear in the sense of quite detailed, but not too extensively detailed, like TESOL Quarterly, for instance. And also when we talk about method, of course, how you execute the procedures, right? How you execute must be very clear. This is also another problem when you do your thesis, okay? Most students also have this problem. For me, my advice is for myself and what I receive from others as well, especially my supervisor. My supervisor is known in the faculty in University of Essex, Faculty of Language, right? She is known as someone who is quite fierce. Someone is like, sometimes people don't like her, sometimes people like her. She can be very stern, very strict, and so on. But I don't know how she can get along with me. My friends will always ask, how do you get along with her? I said, no, I don't get along with her. I just follow whatever she wants. Sometimes I say, right? But maybe because she sees that when she asks me to do, push me to do something, I would try and do it. Right? And she always say, Haliza, you have 5 children. Are you able to do it? I say, yeah, I think so. If I can, I'll do it. And so on. I can sometimes, not really quite honest, but sometimes I do try to be honest. But I do try to, make sure that every semester I would submit to her something. Every semester. One of the things is because in University of Essex, as you know, we have to present every semester. We have to present our progress every semester. We will get marks every semester. If you do not do well, and also University of Essex, one of the things is that I have to finish within 4 years. I cannot finish more than 4 years. If I have done my QT, if I have submitted my proposal and so on, but I have not submitted I have finished my Viva, for instance, I haven't done, my corrections and so on, but it's more than 4 years, I can fail. All right, even though I have completed everything successfully. So it's a very strict university, but it's not a world-ranked university, but in terms of the time frame given to the students, very strict, right? So there are some students who, of course, would not be able to make it, so they would have to ask for extension. And of course, again, extension also is very strict in that sense. So that's why most of the students at that university, I guess that's why that university is not well known as well, because it's quite strict. So it only gives you 4 years. If you cannot finish 4 years, you fail. Like for USIM, we have about 6 years. So that's okay. But over there, but not all university in England, in UK, only that university, the university that I went, which I did not know until I went to it, to that university, right? So here, as I mentioned, when you have that push factor, you are able to collect everything and so on. You have everything, within your range. Try to use it, right? Try to use it for your own benefit. One of them is to write a good article, and make sure when you write, you have all these structures, the framework, and so on. It must be very clear. When we talk about being very clear in terms of data collection, in terms of procedure, is that, for instance, like Maria, if Maria has a research procedure, a method, when she described the method, when I read the method, I can follow each step. I can do exactly what Maria has done or described in the procedure. If I can do it logically, right, quite similar to what Maria has done, that means the description given is very clear and it is okay already. But if it's not, it's like, you jump from one to another, so that creates some doubts, then that is not a good procedure. So in terms of, reliability, in terms of validity, that can be a question. So I guess that is one of the reasons, why my my examiner, the first thing when she shook my hand, right, she says that, I know that this thesis is done by you. But that's the first thing that she says, that which until now, sometimes I just wonder, why did she say that? Because that's the first thing. She did not say congratulations. She did not say anything. She just shakes my hand and she says, I know this thesis is done by you. Then when she says congratulations, probably, because this is what you have to have. The description must be very clear. The execution, how you do it. The person, when the person reads it, the person can imagine, can see, okay, it's very logic. This is how she does it, right? So that's how you have to do. And of course, in journals, it's not going to be the same as thesis. Thesis is going to be very detailed steps, but in journal, it should be what you call a cram, right? Cram into few words, but it must be very, very clear in that instance. Okay, talking about the participants and so on. And finally, when you conclude, make sure you have to actually connect again with whatever framework that you have. Some people ask me, what's the function of the framework? The framework functions importantly when you are doing your analysis. When you analyze, you are going to analyze on using something, based on something. Based on what? Based on that framework. All right, you will have that framework as your guide. Okay, as your guide to actually analyze your data. So when you analyze, some people, they forgot, they just, for instance, in journal article, they will just write pedagogical implication or suggestions. These are the things. They forgot to actually link back to whatever framework that you have. And in journals, frameworks, this theory are very important. As I mentioned, if you read sometimes good articles, their analysis is so simple. It's just descriptive statistic, but how they frame that particular finding to the whole discussion. All right, they in a way discuss critically the framework, the past studies, and so on. So it looks like, wow, it's like a complicated study. But if you study the analysis, it's just a simple analysis. Okay, so at the end, they will again connect with that what you call framework that they have, and they emerge with new findings if they have any. So don't forget, right, whatever you write here is going to be condensed, and this condensed writing is actually being reflected in your whole thesis. All right, whole thesis lah, I guess more than 100 pages thesis, right? That will happen later. But this is how you learn. Right? When you have these articles, this is where you learn more about your study. As Maria mentioned, it's a very lonely journey. Yes, it is. Nobody understands my study. Right? No one knows my study. You need someone you can discuss with, for instance. But if you can tell someone within 5 to 10 minutes what your study is about, then you really know your study. You really know your study. But if you cannot explain, you still have hesitation, you still have doubts, that means you do not know your study. That's why, when you discuss with your supervisor, you do not expect your supervisor to know your study, because your supervisor will just read. For me, I will read and I will, just help to correct what here and there, the loopholes and so on. But I have other students as well to look at, I mean, in terms of their work. So I might have forgotten about yours. So you cannot expect that supervisor, for instance, to know whatever you have read. Of course, you have written. Of course, I do remember, but sometimes I've forgotten already, right? And I will not know your study as well as you do. That's one thing. As the same goes with me and my supervisor, she does not know. Sometimes I remember she mentions, oh, I read this article, Haliza, which mentioned this, and this. And then I would say, yeah, I've read already the article, for instance. Okay. So I guess that is all. Thank you very much. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry, I'm coughing. But if you have any questions, you can ask me. If you see me around, you can also, come to my room, and then if you need to discuss anything, we can just discuss. Okay. So that is all. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I hope it helps. If it's not a lot, just a little, right? At least it gives some sort of an idea of how to write your proposal and turn it into a research article. And more or less, it is not really well presented. I guess it's more from my personal experience. But I do hope that from what I have learned from my personal experience and how I got published, that in a way has actually helped you guys also to have some ideas of how to go about, right? How to go about to publish an article, all right? And it is very important for you to publish an article in a good, it's okay, Scopus Index, so okay as well, Scopus Index article, right, in any Scopus Index journal, right? That's okay as well. You will get followers from that, publication, inshallah, right? So with that, I guess, thank you very much. As I mentioned, if you have any queries and questions and so on, you're welcome to ask me via email. If you have the number, you have my number, you can ask me. But if not, you can ask me via email, as you can see here in the slide given here, right? So thank you very much, everyone. I hope it helps you guys a lot. Right? Thank you. So we will end the session here. Okay.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay. Oh, it helps you a lot. Okay, so I'll just leave the room, everyone. So I hope you too, all right, have a very good week ahead of you, inshallah. All right, bye-bye. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam, Prof.